Good morning. Hope everybody had a terrific weekend. As we welcome you back here on Monday for the first or third week. First time we're actually doing it on Monday, but third week of our virtual fall semester here at BCC. I loved, and I wrote quite a few times on your recent assignment, how excellent the answers were, or great answers, really good answers. I loved reading about, stereotyping. Being stereotyped is not a lot of fun. But as some of you did indicate that, a lot of times it's by accident. And that's why it's called a perceptual error. Same thing with, some people say, well, I never stereotype. I try not to do it. I'm not racist. You don't have to be racist. Okay, I was stereotyped because of the way my body looked, as a lot of you did also indicate. Yeah, I mean, we can stereotype because, or I know that more than a few people, and I've made this mistake before. You come up to a tall person, the first thing you say is, oh, you must love playing basketball. And I probably made the same mistake. A lot of people said, too, in the class here, that when they've mistaken a tall person thinking they like basketball, not only do they don't, but they never played it before. So, yeah, stereotyping is very interesting because it can happen so innocently, and that's why it's called a perceptual error. Of course, yeah, it could be purposely done, but in most cases, it seems like a lot of you, it was innocent if you happen to stereotype someone. Now, the listening answers were also very interesting because, and it's one of the things I really, really wish we were in a classroom because I would love to have a discussion about this. And I know we're going to have some WebEx meetings this semester, but it's so difficult to schedule a WebEx meeting because, like I said, a lot of you have changed your schedules around since you registered for this class, and especially, with some of you having children, or even if it's, you got a younger brother or sister, sometimes you only have that one real good computer in the house. So it's very difficult for you during certain periods of the day to get access to that particular computer. As a matter of fact, we've changed scenery today because my wife, we needed to switch because she's doing some meetings herself, and she does better with some of her meetings on her laptop than she does on the main computer. So now I've come into her office. Yes, it's her office. I don't have an office. But I've come into her office, and I'm using her computer today. But the listening, yeah, a lot of people were like, no way, I could never take no, 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 it would be rude and offensive. I'm thinking, why would it be rude and offensive? Okay. People kept saying, oh, somebody, and I don't want to mention their name, like, oh, I'm not going to sit there and write word for word. I didn't want you to write word for word. I didn't say grab a 200-page notepad and start filling it up. One time when I did this, it was after a few adult beverages, and somebody, of course, after a few adult beverages is like, a little crying and stuff. Something was going on in their life. It was about 2:30 in the morning. It was at one of our classic New Jersey diners. So I realized they were going to go on for a while, and I just wanted to write down 3 or 4 words. That's all I wanted to do. Like every 4 or 5 minutes, write down a word that would remind me of what they... Because sometimes when people have one of these very traumatic experiences, they're going to go for a while. And you want to make sure that you write a couple words down so that when they say, so what do you think? Or what should I do? If you don't write things down, the last thing you're going to remember is like the last 25 seconds. So if you can go back to what they said in the first 5 minutes, and it's just one word that'll remind you of that. And I actually went to one of those little metal containers with the napkins and took out one of the little white napkins, and I started to write some things down. Again, it was only like 3 or 4 words. Like in the scenario, I listed a sales circular from a supermarket, and just that little blank margin on the left where you write down 3 or 4 words. But note-taking can be so important when it comes to listening. Probably the best example. Back around 2008, we hired a new president at Bergen Community College. His name was Dr. Jerry Ryan. And as his first semester was beginning that September of 2008, he wanted to meet with some faculty just to talk with them, get their ideas. And I happened to be one of them that was selected. So I walked in, and I was only scheduled for like 10 minutes, and that's all we really took is 10 minutes. So we introduce each other, we start talking a little bit, and he says to me, so, Mike, let me ask you, what are you excited about the college going into the future? Well, being a Lyndhurst guy, To me, at the time, as we were about to open, it was the Lyndhurst campus. I thought this was a great idea because so many people in southern Bergen County do come to Bergen. But let's be honest, you want to get caught in that Route 17 traffic or have to pay tolls every day as a student to take the parkway if you wanted to do that. But then going on Route 3 to get to the park, it was just having a southern campus would be fantastic. Especially for me, I even said this to the president. I says, yeah, man, if I could go stop in Lyndhurst, have lunch with my dad, and then go teach class, I'd love that. And as, of course, I'm saying all this, he's writing a few things down. Now, I didn't go up to the president of the college and say, yo, why are you being so rude? Why are you writing things down when I'm talking to you? Aren't you listening to me? Well, of course he was listening. He was just getting some help in the listening process. So now I don't see him for almost 2 months. I happen to see him. It was back when the Office of Student Life would take some students up for a weekend to a leadership weekend, and it was up in one of the Catskill resorts. And it was a Saturday morning, and I go up there, I give some presentations and stuff, act as like a chaperone. So I'm sitting at breakfast, and there's like a faculty table. And Dr. Ryan had come up. He's going to be giving a presentation that day. Sat next to me and says, hey, Michael, how are you? He says, hey, listen, let me give you an update on the Lyndhurst campus. How did he know to begin that conversation with me? Of course, because he wrote it down. And it helped him. Remember that last step in the 5-step process of listening? Remember. Okay? He only saw me 2 other times that year, and every time he saw me, he would bring up the Lyndhurst campus without me saying a word. Okay? So, now, and I understand. I totally understand. For some of you, it's a new concept. But just get away from the fact that you're not taking notes like you would take in a classroom. But what I also love, I wish we were in front of the class, is when people feel this way, I walk up to them, I grab their notebook, I say, why are you writing all this stuff down? Are you being rude to me? Are you not listening to me? And they're like, oh no, this is a class. I'm like, well, what's the difference? Whether you're talking to your best friend or you're sitting in the class, what are you doing both places? You're listening. Okay? So, but again, I don't take it away from anybody who couldn't see themselves doing it, because that's understandable. It's a new concept. I've only done it, I think, 2 or 3 times myself. Okay? But they were necessary. They were necessary because somebody was going to go on and they were going to go into some serious detail. And I wanted to make sure I gave them the best response possible. I want to talk a little bit about Chapter 4 in language. One of the things I love about language is the words that we use and how we use them. For example, one of my favorite terms is what we call relative words. Now, one of the reasons why this is one of my favorites from your textbook, relative words, is I actually, I would teach about relative words, but had never really, noticed it. Hopefully my wife will pick up that phone call. There's a phone call. Hopefully my wife picks it up. Anyway. Come on, babe. Pick up the phone unless she's in a meeting. All right, we'll wait for the machine to pick it up. Hopefully the machine picks it up. Good. Anyway. So, to give you an example of relative words, and I'm back in Indiana, and I had a really good friend in Indiana who had a wife and 3 kids, and I was single at the time. So I remember him asking me, he was looking for a place to take his kids to dinner, take his family out to dinner. And he asked me, because I loved the place too, I was recommending a place that I really liked. And he says, so how are the prices? And of course I said, oh man, it's really inexpensive, really cheap, no problem. Well, of course he then goes there, calls me the next day and says, man, you didn't tell me it was so expensive. I said, no, it's not expensive. Relative words. See, I was saying it was inexpensive relative to me. Single guy, college professor, all right? I got a little cash on me, so if something costs a certain amount, let's say a dinner costs like $15, to me that's just, it's $15 and a little tip, no. But relative to someone who has a spouse, husband or wife, and 3 children, now you got a family of 5, well, a $15 dinner per person, that's going to be a lot more. So that's kind of like relative words. And it's always been one of my favorites because, relatively speaking, it's something that comes up a lot when we talk to people. But one of my favorite parts of your chapter has to deal with this word here, and that is semantics. See, semantics is the study of meaning, is what words mean and why they mean and why we use those words. And the reason why I like semantics and meanings of words is that our language and the words that we use and the meanings behind them are always constantly changing. It's so interesting to me. I'll give you a great example. Think of a word that you use, like a slang term you use for money. Okay? You go back to the 1920s, 1930s, and it's dough, and then it's, greenbacks and cheddar or Benjamins. I mean, there's just always been some kind of different word. And you're probably all laughing at me because those are probably now old terms. Although I do remember when they were brand new terms in this class. But there's always different words that you use to describe money. Okay? And the meanings are the same thing. It's money, cash. You just have a different way of expressing the words that you use to mean money or getting money, that kind of thing. And that's why I love semantics so much. But it also leads into our exercise. Because, see, normally I would break you up into groups and you guys would generate these together, but now you're going to have to generate them separately. And you've already checked out your attachment, but I'll show you anyway. What you are going to do is you're going to come up with 5 lists. Now, each list is going to have 6 words or terms. Now, what I mean by a term, it's like 2 or 3 words that need to go together to have some meaning. All right? Now, the first list you're going to come up with 6 words or terms that are new, that have only been a part of our mainstream language for the last 8 years, yet still is part of our mainstream language. Like people from 8 years old to 80 years old know the word and understand its meaning, even though it's only been around for about 8 years or less. Okay? Now, that does not include slang terms. All right? No slang terms, because remember, 8 to 80 know the words and understand the meaning. All right? That's list 1. List 2. I'm looking for 6 words or terms that are old or obsolete. Words that used to be a part of our common language, but just aren't anymore. Okay? It could actually be a word that's common today, but used to have another meaning that isn't used anymore. All right? There's a couple of words like that in our vernacular, in our mainstream language. Number 3, 6 words or terms that derive from a co-cultural group. Like a particular cultural group in America has this word and the meaning behind it, yet everybody uses it. One of the examples I talk about in your assignment sheet is I know a lot of people who have never even been to Hawaii, never mind have Hawaiian blood, and yet they always say hello, say aloha, all right? Or I know a lot of non-Italian speaking people who, when they're leaving, will say ciao, okay? So what are those words or terms that are constantly used? I know there's couple of key terms, I'll give you a hint, has to do with what happens down at the Bayonne Ocean Terminal. Number 4, I'm looking for 6 words or terms that whenever they're mentioned always have negative connotations or negative feelings associated with that word. Now, to give you an example, and of course, on page 97, you can look up connotation. To give you an example of a negative connotation, I had taught in Indiana for several years before coming to Bergen, and I taught at Bergen in 1999, 2000, and the early part of 2001. And of course, students would always be a little nervous getting up in front of the room and giving a speech, So I used to say to them, I said, yep, you need to come right up here in front of the room, dead center, right here at ground zero. And we used to laugh about it. Because ground zero, of course, is the impact place of a bomb. And I would say that they would blow up because they're so nervous about public speaking. Then came September 11th. I don't use that term anymore. And I haven't for 19 years. Because that term, ground zero, now has a very negative connotation. So that's what I'm looking for. And then finally, number 5, 6 words or terms that are slang terms. Now, I know all you young people got a lot of slang terms. Come up with them, but you also must provide the meaning of those slang terms. Especially because, more than likely, I've never heard them before. So there you go. Let's get those lists out. And they're due, of course, by Wednesday, September 16th at 8 p.m. So we'll see you on, there we go. We'll see you on Thursday morning.